We're now starting chapter 11 in Numbers. Let's read the chapter first. Okay.
And the people were as murmurers, speaking evil in the ears of the Lord. And when the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled. And the fire of the Lord burnt among them and devoured in the uttermost part of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and Moses prayed unto the Lord, and the fire abated.
Okay. Go on, Josh.
Did you want to make any? Okay.
No. Let's go. Let's read through the chapter first. Yes.
Okay. And the name of that place was called Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, and the children of Israel also wept on their parts, and said, "Would that we were given flesh to eat."
We remember the fish which we were wont to eat in Egypt for naught, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic.
But now
our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all. We have naught save this manna to look to.
Okay, Donna.
Now the manna was like coriander seed, and the appearance thereof as the appearance of bdellium. The people went about and gathered it and ground it in mills or beat it in mortars and sieved it in pots and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of a cake baked with oil.
Okay, and when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. And Moses heard the people weeping, family by family, every man at the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly, and Moses was displeased. Okay, maybe let's stop here and analyze what is happening so far. The people. Okay, verse 1 is the people were as murmurers, speaking evil in the ears of the Lord. Okay, it's a good translation, but we could translate differently. The people were as if complaining. They were
Kvetching.
What? They were kvetching. Yeah, kvetching is a good word. Yeah. They were kvetching evil in the ears of God. So the interesting thing here is that we don't know what they're complaining about. You realize that? Just ra. They just say. So is it evil in the ears of God, or they are saying evil? And I think that the second interpretation is they are complaining about something, and they say that something is not good, not that it's evil. Something is not good. But the word ra could be read with both, meaning they were complaining saying that something is not good, and it was not good in the ears of God. And now God sends this fire, they cry out to Moshe. Moshe prays, the fire dies out, and he calls the place Tav'era, which means the burning, because the fire of God burned through them. So now, this is the first event that happens after Moshe talks to Yitro, to Jethro, and before that, we have the whole beginning of Bamidbar, when we see the structure of society. The Torah describes how to build how the Mishkan is put together, how the camp is structured, etc. And now this is the first thing. This is I think we could call it an act of rebellion, right? The people rebel against God and say we're not happy, but we don't know why they're not happy. This can happen sometimes in the setting of a school, the office, at home, when you hear someone saying, I'm not happy, I'm not comfortable. Why? I don't know why. I don't know, something is missing.
Isn't it that they're upset about the menu? They don't.
That's later. That's later.
They miss the onions. They miss the.
No, that's another story.
Better back in Egypt.
That's the second story. You see? In the second event, so this is event number 1, they just complain, and the response is fire. and we don't know that anyone died in the fire. It's just fire.
Okay.
Then in verse 4, it's the mixed multitude called asafsuf, which we could also roughly translate as riffraff,
Hoi polloi.
hoi polloi, right? Who were amongst him. It avut ava. They felt a lusting. They felt that they desire something, and the children of Israel also wept on their part, and they say we want to eat meat. So here the people cried out. Here it's the people. Here it's the riffraff and Bnei Israel, and they recalled the fish, the free fish, the cucumbers, melons, leek, onion, garlic. This sounds a very good menu. Vegetarian, pescatarian. But they say we wish we could eat meat. Did they eat meat in Egypt or not? We don't know. They say we long for meat, but we remember the fish. They don't say we ate meat in Egypt. And they say our soul is dry. There's nothing to eat except for the manna. The manna is like coriander seed, and I think we spoke about it last week in the context of the grains that Ruth brought to Naomi. That it was not easy to eat the manna. It doesn't come prepared, meals on wheels or anything like that. It's you have to work. You have to gather it and grind it and beat it, and most probably was something like soybeans, because you can make anything from it. Then it comes, the dew falls on it, and it's covered with manna. And when Moshe hears it, Vaishma Moshe ta'am bocher mishpechotav, he hears the people weeping family by family, every man at the door of his tent. So it becomes sort of a riot of crying. Now everybody gets out to the opening of the tent, and they're crying and they're weeping. And here again, Hashem is angry. Vayiharav Hashemot uve'anei Moshe ra. So it's the same word that we have here, keyword, ra be'oznei Hashem. Here we say that it's ra in the eyes of Moshe, and we can understand why Moshe is not happy. He remembers them as slaves. He says, for God's sake, you were slaves. You had no independence. You had no life. Now you're crying because you have to work hard to get the manna. How can you do that? So Moshe turns to God and says, why did you deal ill with your servant? Why have I not found favor in your sight that you have laid the burden of all these people upon me? So the word evil or bad, ra, repeats here, right? Lama hare'ota le'avdecha. Lama hare'ota le'avdecha. That's a very strong accusation. Moshe says, you dealt with me you wronged me. Why did you make me suffer? Lama lo matzati han b'neicha. In the past, Moshe and God speak several times of that concept of finding grace or finding favor, and Moshe is the favored one. Moshe is the one who found grace in the eyes of God. And here, of a sudden, say, "Do you hate me? Is that your punishment? The punishment you give me to burden me with the people?" And he's the first pulpit rabbi, by the way. You realize that, right? He's dealing. He's dealing with the community, and he says, "What have I done to deserve this? I'm trying to help them, and look what is going on." Thank God nobody's my community is here. They're good people. There. So in verse 12, he goes on to say, "Have I conceived all these people? Have I brought them forth that you should say unto me, carry them in your bosom as the nursing father carries the sucking child, unto the land which you promised their fathers?" It's a very strong argument of Moshe against God. And what Moshe says basically here, he says, there are two types of leaders or caregivers. There's the leader, the king, the teacher, whatever, and there's the father or mother, the parent. The parent is a different relationship. A good parent would love the child no matter what. He will accept all of the kids, of the child's strange behavior or unexpected behavior. But a leader would not always be willing to do that. And Moshe says, that's where I draw the line. I cannot be their father. Now they behave like children. Now they behave like you're a teenager who says, I'm very upset because they're crying because they have no reception, or because they can't find their brand of water, or whatever it is. And Moshe says, I'm sorry, I didn't give birth to them. I didn't carry them. And he says, you tell me to carry them in my bosom as a nurse carries the suckling. And this word omen, we have just seen it in Ruth. And we said that it derives from mother, because she's the center of trust for the baby. She's the anchor that the baby clings to, and that's also the source of the verbs, the words emet, truth, to say, because that's where you expose your true feelings, hopefully, and amen, truth or faith. So he says, I don't have this kind of relationship with them. I'm willing to give them a lot, but I'm not going to go that much. And he says, you have promised this land to their parents. If you're looking for a familial relationship, it's between you and them. So let's continue reading on verse 13. Let's do the same order. So Julian, you want to read that?
Wherefrom should I have flesh to give unto all this people? For they trouble me with their weeping, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all this people myself alone, because it is too heavy for me.
Okay, and John?
And if you deal thus with me, kill me. I pray thee, if I have found favor in your sight, and let me not look upon my wretchedness.
Okay.
And the Lord said unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them unto the tent of meeting, that they may stand there with you.
Okay, go on. Donna?
Okay.
17, and I will come.
And I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon you, and will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you bear it not yourself alone. And say unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and you shall eat flesh. For you have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, would that we were given flesh to eat, for it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and ye shall eat.
Okay.
They're gonna eat a whole lot.
Yeah, Abby? What?
You shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days, but a whole month, until it come out at your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because you have rejected the Lord, who is among you, and troubled him with weeping, saying, why now did we come forth out of Egypt?
Okay, and now Moshe's response is, and Moses said, the people among who I am are 600,000 men on foot, and yet you said, I will give them flesh, and they may eat a whole month. If flocks and herds be slain for them, will they suffice them? Or if all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them, will they suffice them? So, just in general, what we see here, the people rebel against God twice. Once in the first segment of the chapter, where we don't know what they're complaining about, and second, they complain about the manna. Now, who's the rebel? In the third segment here, who's the rebel?
Moses.
Moses is acting incredulous. I mean, if we talk about omen, which is a key word that we have to look at, omen as trust and faith, it seems as if Moshe at this point loses his faith, loses his trust in God. He says, how can you give them all that? And we'll go back to that later, But we see that Moshe starts with this complaint: is I cannot carry them. I'm not. I don't want to give such responsibility. It's too much for me. Kill me. I'd rather die than going through this evil wretchedness. Again, it's the English, but in Hebrew, bera'ati. So first it was ra be'oznei Hashem, right? Ra to God. Then was ra in the eyes of Moshe. Now Moshe says, I don't want to go through such ra, such evil. I'd rather die. And it seems like a little exaggerated. Moshe is not suffering physically. Moshe has to face off the complaints of the people, but he says this life is not worth living. It's a little bit like a Yiddish shemame, that okay, you don't want to eat my food, you don't want to get married. Okay, let me just go and die quietly, and you could see Shiva if you want.
I'll just sit here in the dark.
Yes, it sounds like a little exaggerated, but fine.
It reminds me of Jonah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Jonah,
right.
who says, I just would rather die if I don't have this plant anymore.
Right. It's interesting. And Yonah, by the way, is Yonah ben Amitai, is the son of truth. And that's something like Emet that is missing there. So we'll see. And God tells Moshe, gather 70 people and bring them, and they will help you. And tell the people you're going to get meat. So Moshe doesn't respond to the first part saying, I will, and of course he will do it. But for the second part he says, how are you going to do that? How are you going to provide meat to all these people? So now God responds. Let's continue, Julian, to 23.
Had unmute, sorry about that. And the Lord said unto Moses, is the Lord's hand waxed short? Now you shall see whether my word shall come to pass unto you or not. And Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them around about the tent.
Okay, Josh.
And the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke unto him, and took of the spirit that was upon him, and put it upon the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when their spirit rested upon them, they prophesied, but they did so no more. So prophesied. But there remained 2 men in the camp. The name of the one was Eldad, and the name of the other Medad. And the spirit rested upon them, and they were of them that were recorded, but had not gone out unto the tent, and they prophesied in the camp.
Okay. Is Donna in that?
And there ran a young man and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the minister of Moses from his youth up, answered and said, My Lord Moses, shut them in.
And
Okay.
Moses said unto him, Are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put his spirit upon them. And Moses withdrew into the camp, he and the elders of Israel.
Okay. So if we stop here, now we have, in verse 23, it's an open rebuke of God towards Moshe. Hayad Adonai Tiktsar, you think that I cannot do that? So God sees that as some display of disbelief. How can you say that? And he says, you will see if my word shall come to pass unto you or not. You realize that the promise of giving meat or flesh in this outdated translation, I think it's a little rattling to read, eating flesh, to preserve only the Yiddish fleischig. But when God says, you will see whether what I said will happen to you or not, he says now giving them meat is not about them, it's about you, because you lost faith in me. So it's a serious thing. But we already see there's a pattern here. You realize that's chapter 11 in Bamidbar is about losing faith. So it's appropriate, whoever numbered that chapter as chapter 11, maybe meant, is as kind of a prophecy that it's a spiritual bankruptcy. So they always remember chapter 11 in Bamidbar to be that. So we see this spiritual bankruptcy where The people rebel against God once, twice, and now Moshe acts with some kind of disbelief or distrust, and Moshe gathers the people, and God bestows His Spirit upon the 70 men, and 2 men were left in the camp. They said that they were among those who were recorded, but they did not go to the tent of the meeting. That's a strange statement. It seems like the midrashic interpretation here is correct, that Moshe wanted to get 2 of each tribe, 6 of each tribe, so that would bring it to 72 people. So 2 people had to be sort of like in a lottery decided to stay in the camp. That's one possibility. But another possibility is that they were among the 70 people, meaning only 68 people went with Moshe to that place. In any case, Eldad and Medad stay in the camp, which is in itself an act of it's a rebellious act, right? They were supposed to go, but they don't go, and then they prophesy, and the lad runs and tells Moshe, those 2 people are saying prophecies, and they're not supposed to do that because they're not doing it through you. And Yoshua says, Adoni Moshe Klaim, shut them in. They have to be punished. Moshe says, are you jealous for my sake? I would like to see all the people prophets, and God, and that God would put His Spirit upon them. So, who is acting here in a way of distrust or rebellion, besides Eldad and Medad?
Joshua.
No, Joshua is supportive. Joshua says you have to shut them in.
Shut them in. I thought I meant shut them in, like punish them for doing that.
Yeah, no, he wants to punish them, but he does it out of support from Moshe. He says they're not supposed to prophesy without your permission. So, but there is someone here who challenges Moshe. Besides Eldad and Medad, who's the main challenger to Moshe?
Well, it'd have to be God.
It is God. Because God is the God who bestows prophecy. And if He bestows prophecy on Eldad and Medad, what He tells Moshe is that the act of the 70 elders going to the camp to be someone has to shut the microphone on. It's we have this echo. When God bestows His Spirit upon Eldad and Medad, He basically tells Moshe, yes, the elders came to to be with you, but we don't need that. I could do it without your presence. I don't need you to transfer the prophecy to them. So, in terms of a crisis, there's another breach, sort of. Not that God abandons Moshe, but it's sort of He pokes him. He says, "I don't need you to deliver prophecy to other people. I could do directly with them." And Moshe gets the message, because he says, "Don't blame Eldad and Medad. It's not their fault. Hamkaneh Atali, are you jealous for me? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put His Spirit upon them." He says that the prophecy comes from God. And if God chooses to do that, it's His choice. I understand that. So in a way, it's like almost Moshe is repenting. So here we read in verse 30 and 31, and Moses withdrew into the camp. No, you read that already. And there went forth a wind from the Lord and brought across quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, about a day's journey on this side, and a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, and about 2 cubits above the face of the earth. That sounds like a lot of meat. So it's a little too much. It could be an exaggeration just for the sake of the story. And the people rose up all the day and all the night and all the next day and gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 heaps, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. So that's a lovely sight. You can imagine a camp of hundreds of thousands of people, and around them millions of dead birds in piles. I assume they killed them. What happens next? While the flesh was yet between their teeth, before it was chewed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and he smote the people with a very great plague. And the name of the place was called Kivrot Ta'ava, the graves of desire, because there they buried the people who lusted. From Kivrot Ta'ava, they journeyed to Hatzerot, and they abode at Hatzerot. And in the next chapter, if you were hoping for an uplifting event that will bring us out of this crisis, don't, because we'll have more and more events coming in. We'll have to see what is really the common denominator here. There's a why is God? So this first this question: why is God happy? Why is God angry with them? He promised them meat for a whole month. So why is he angry with them? Is he giving them that just in order to punish them?
Well, one thing that's missing is the people being grateful for receiving.
They were not.
They go right. They go right into eating it, and there's no sense of where it came from.
Right. Okay, that's one. I agree, and also it seems like the way they gathered, as if there's no tomorrow. The way that they just gathered the meat shows that they have no trust in God. So if God says, I'm going to give you enough meat for a month, just like they saw with the manna, it comes tonight, you have it the next day, you have it the next day. But they felt like, okay, I have to keep as much as I have now because I don't know what I'm going to have tomorrow. That shows that they have no trust, that they are totally controlled by their desire. And people die. This is the punishment. So before we continue to chapter 12, let us look at the key word in Hebrew here. There's a key word. There's more than one. One key word we will look at today, and that is definitely something that is lost in translation. In verse 4, what is the Hebrew for the word mixed multitude?
Asaf-suf.
Asaf-suf. Okay, what is the root? Let me write it in Hebrew. What is the root of the word? What is that? Okay, my computer is. I did something here. I don't know. What is the root of the word asaf-suf?
Asaf, right?
Add to.
Yeah, asaf-suf. The verb is asaf, the root. 1 second. I know what happened here. This. Okay. Okay, I got rid of that. Yeah, it's a doubling of the. In Hebrew, we have only mostly 3-letter verbs. If they're 4 letters, either it's a doubling of two consonants like galgal, tzratzar, bakbuk, even in Tanakh, later in Tanakh we have that, but usually it's 3 letters. So here it's asaf, saf, and this is diminutive, like the word yarok is green, right? While Yirakrak is greenish, a little green. Adom, adamdam, red, reddish. Katan, small. Ktantan, very small. So Asaf is together, but Asafsuf is a gathering of no value. I mean, they're unworthy. So that's the first. So that's the first time that we see the verb gathering, but it appears again in this chapter. So first we have the Asafsuf. Then in verse 16, God tells to Moshe, Esfali shiv'im ish miziknei Israel, gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel. In verse 22, Moshe says, would all the fish of the sea be gathered for them and suffice for them? In verse 24, Moshe goes out and gathers 70 men of the elders of Israel. In verse 25, it's not the same word, but there is an alliteration of the sounds of samech vepei. So asafsuf, asafu, leasef. And in verse 30, in the most interesting usage of the verb, and Moshe withdrew into the camp, but in the Hebrew, Vayiasef Moshe al Mahaneh, Moshe was gathered into the camp, which is also a term used in Hebrew to describe death. To be gathered to one's forefathers means to die. So Moshe was gathered into the camp. How many occurrences we had so far? Let's count them. We have Asafsuf 1 in verse 4. Then number 2 in verse 16 is Fali. Then in verse 22, gathering the fish. That's number 3. Yasafu in in 24, he gathers people. So that's number 4. Then number 5 is in 25, Yasafu. And in verse 30, Moshe gathers into the camp. That's the 6th occurrence. In verse 32, it appears twice. They gathered the quail, and the person who took the least gathered 10 piles. So we have in chapter 11 7 times the appearance of the verb asaf or yasaf. So that already is an indicative of something that is happening in the parasha, and we have to search for it. One more thing. Go here. I'm going back to Bamidbar. 1 second. Chapter 11. Sorry, I want to go to chapter 12. Let's just take a quick look into chapter 12. We'll do it more in depth next week. That's when Miriam and Aaron speak against Moshe. And in verse 14, God says, okay, she has to be quarantined for 7 days, and then te'asef, then she could gather into the camp, and that's what they did, and the people had to wait until Miriam was gathered. So what we've seen so far in chapter 11 and 12 in Bamidbar is that we have a list of crises, loss of trust. People lose trust in God, in Moshe. Moshe loses trust in himself, in God. God breaches some kind of understanding that he has with Moshe. The Eldad and Medad prophesy without permission. It's like all chaos, all hell breaks loose here. And within all that, the key word is Asaf. to gather, gathering. What is the importance? What is the meaning of that? If you wish, you could continue reading and go back even a little bit before chapter 11. Read the last segment of chapter 10 and search for the connection. So, and that will continue, God willing, next week.